The bright lights of professional wrestling always make everything look glamorous, but behind that shine are bodies worn down by years of non-stop punishment. These warriors step into the ring with unbreakable spirit, yet once the curtain falls, they face constant pain, weakened joints, and the long-term effects of thousands of impacts. Some of them should have stopped years earlier, yet they kept going, because of passion, because of the fans, because of a legacy they felt compelled to honor. This is the story of the legends who sacrificed their health to make history. And now, let's get started. Wrestling Sphere, go! Number 11. Mick Foley. Mick Foley once hoped for a memorable WWE comeback in 2012. He planned to enter a heated storyline with Dean Ambrose, giving the rising talent from FCW a major push onto the big stage. Foley even set the angle in motion with sharp back-and-forth interactions on social media, convincing fans that he was truly preparing for a return. But everything came crashing down after Foley met with a neurologist and received a blunt warning. His body could no longer withstand another match. Throughout his brutal career, Foley endured countless head injuries. But many insiders believe much of his decline came from his time in TNA, where he continued to take dangerous risks even as his physical condition noticeably worsened. At an age when most wrestlers had moved backstage, Foley still pushed himself to deliver in every match, absorbing heavy blows, taking hard bumps, and sacrificing his health for the crowd's reaction. His slowing physical reflexes made head impacts even more severe, leading to a series of concussions within just a few years. What he didn't realize was that those moments of pushing beyond his limits would eventually kill any chance of returning to WWE. Even more heartbreaking, in 2024 Foley once again sparked hope for one final match. He took the idea seriously, losing weight, training consistently, and trying to get himself into the best shape he could manage. But as he trained, the injuries built up over decades came roaring back. Foley suffered a concussion during practice, forcing him to cancel all plans and accept that his body simply couldn't carry the burden of the profession anymore. In the end, those reckless high-risk years in TNA drained Foley more than anything else, pushing him to a point where every attempted comeback became impossible. Number 10. Ric Flair. Ric Flair once had one of the most emotional and perfectly executed retirements in WWE history. It felt like the ideal final chapter for one of wrestling's greatest icons. But just a year later, Flair returned to the ring as his personal life unraveled. Another divorce pushed him back into wrestling, not for glory, but because financial pressure forced him into joining a tour in Australia, where he faced Hulk Hogan. Despite the backstage issues surrounding the tour, Flair vs. Hogan matches were surprisingly well received. Seeing the two legends square off in Australia generated excitement, but it also raised an uncomfortable question. Did Flair still have enough left to perform the way fans remembered? Rumor has it Flair even asked Vince McMahon about returning to WWE, but Vince shut the idea down immediately, making it clear that door was closed for good. With WWE off the table, TNA became the only place where he could continue wrestling and keep a stable income to deal with his financial troubles. During his roughly 18 months in TNA, Flair kept the swagger of the Nature Boy, still charismatic on the mic, still carrying himself like a star, but his body simply couldn't match the character he had built. Many compared him to Randy, the Ram, from Mickey Rourke's film, a man so in love with the spotlight that he couldn't accept how far past his physical limits he'd gone. His matches went too long, his bumps were rough and awkward, and moments on the ropes made fans feel equal parts admiration and concern. Worse yet, it wasn't just his body taking the damage. His legacy took a hit as well. Many fans felt that coming back so late tarnished the pristine ending Flair should have had. By 2022, Flair wrestled his last match at age 73, an event both fans and fellow wrestlers believe is better left unspoken. It closed the chapter of a legend who simply couldn't walk away, even though his body had been screaming at him to stop for years. Number 9. Tony Atlas. Tony Atlas once said his career was too much, too soon, and it's hard to find a more accurate description of his journey. In 1983, he reached the peak of success when he and Rocky Johnson became WWF Tag Team Champions. But that spotlight faded quickly. Just a few years later, by the late 80s, the former Mr. USA hit rock bottom. Tony lost his home, slept on cold park benches, and fell into substance abuse after a chaotic divorce. Once a symbol of power and strength, he suddenly became a man adrift, directionless, and nearly hopeless. The person who pulled him back from that darkness was the woman who would later become his wife. She helped him escape homelessness, rebuild his stability, and regain confidence. Thanks to her, Tony earned a second chance in WWF in 1990. He spent 8 months trying to restart his career. But by the end of the decade, financial trouble caught up with him again, this time without drugs or personal mistakes to blame. The wrestling business simply didn't offer many ways for aging veterans to make a living. Without WWF or WCW appearances, you were nearly stuck earning limited pay from small independent shows. There were no signing deals, fan conventions, or steady income streams like today's stars enjoy. In 2006, WWE contacted Atlas once more, inducting him into the Hall of Fame and later giving him a touring trainer role and an on-screen position as Mark Henry's manager. This period helped him reconnect with fans and earn consistent income. But after he was released in 2010, Atlas returned to the independent circuit, where he continued wrestling a handful of matches each year, even into his early 70s. Today, Tony Atlas is in a far better place than his darkest days, but his story carries a harsh lesson. Early fame can knock a wrestler off life's rails, and the price they pay isn't just physical, it can shake the very foundation of their lives. Number 8. Jake Roberts. Like Tony Atlas, Jake, the Snake, Roberts spiraled into a dark period after his peak years, forced to keep wrestling long after his body had surpassed its limits. No one understood this better than those who watched Jake in the late 90s, especially after the 1999 documentary Beyond the Mat exposed one of the worst chapters of his life. The film revealed a Jake crushed by personal struggles, estranged from his family, and surviving through low-level local shows. He stepped into the ring in an unstable state, sometimes drunk, sometimes under the influence of drugs. There were haunting moments. Just hours after finishing a match, he was seen smoking crack. It was rock bottom, a place no wrestler ever wants to reach, where fame, health, and identity are all stripped away. During this time, Jake drifted from small training centers to tiny town halls, performing just to feed his addiction. The man who once terrified crowds with his cold stare and the snake in his hands had become a shadow of his former self. His downfall became a brutal reminder of wrestling's dark side. When you push yourself far past your physical limit, it's not only your body that breaks, your life can fall apart with it. But unlike many who never find their way back, Jake's story took an unexpected turn. DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, stepped in to help him rebuild. Page brought Jake into his home, supervised his workouts, guided him through addiction recovery, and, most importantly, helped him regain clarity. It was a long, difficult journey, but gradually Jake regained his health, his focus, and the self-respect he had lost. Today, Jake no longer struggles through underground shows to survive. He appears on television, manages younger talent in AEW, and lives a far healthier life. The journey of Jake, the Snake, Roberts stands as powerful proof that even when a career and a life seem destroyed by years of punishment, there is still hope for a new beginning. Number 7. Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes entered the early 2000s in shaky financial condition. It was a period when the American dream was essentially forced to return to the ring, even though age and declining health made it impossible for him to keep up with a heavy schedule. ECW became the place he chose to perform, and even though he was long past his prime, his matches there had an unexpected impact. Fans welcomed him enthusiastically, and that reaction restored the confidence he had lost after years of working behind the scenes. His ECW appearances not only lifted his spirits but also provided the steady income he desperately needed. Energized by that momentum, Dusty founded his own wrestling promotion in 2000, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. It wasn't just a passion project, it was a way to create opportunities for young talent and maintain his presence in the industry. From 2000 to 2003, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling operated regularly, and Dusty wrestled frequently, not only because the company needed him, but because he believed his presence drew fans and kept the promotion alive. Even in his 50s, with obvious physical limitations, Dusty stepped into the ring again and again, delivering emotional performances that embodied the true spirit of the American dream. He knew his body wasn't agile anymore, unable to perform complex maneuvers, but he compensated with storytelling, charisma, and a deep connection with the audience. From 2000 to his final match in 2010, Dusty Rhodes wrestled nearly 100 times, an astonishing number for someone his age. Every time he walked to the ring, he gave everything he had, even as his body steadily declined. There were matches where he had to adjust his entire style to match his condition, but he never lost his dedication. Dusty kept wrestling simply because he loved the business, loved the fans, and sometimes because circumstances left him no choice. But regardless of the reason, Dusty always brought raw emotion and unwavering passion, the very qualities that made him one of professional wrestling's most unforgettable icons. Number 6. Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant's decision not to treat his acromegaly drastically shortened his life and turned his final years into a painful struggle. At his peak, Andre was an unmatched phenomenon, a man whose massive size and natural charisma left fans around the world in awe. But behind the spotlight, his condition caused his body to grow uncontrollably. Over the last decade of his life, Andre began to fully feel the consequences. His increasing weight made every step a challenge. His joints, especially his back, were in constant agony, to the point where he relied on alcohol just to dull the pain. A relentless travel and wrestling schedule, with frequent flights between the US and Japan, only made things worse. His back hurt so severely that even bending down became nearly impossible. Still, Andre kept stepping into the ring because it was the life he chose, and because he knew his time was limited. Doctors advised surgery to treat his condition, and fans still wonder whether accepting it might have changed his fate. But Andre remained firm in his belief. If this was the body he was given, he would live with it to the end. He didn't want to risk a major operation that could leave him immobile, or take away the profession he loved most. All the way to 1993, Andre continued wrestling and traveling across continents, a pace even young, healthy wrestlers would struggle to maintain. He pushed through each match, sometimes unable to take the stance he once relied on, yet always determined to perform for the crowd. Andre the Giant's life stands as a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made by an artist who lived for his audience. His refusal to seek treatment made his final years heavy and painful, but Andre chose to live every moment fully, just as the larger-than-life figure fans will never forget. Number 5. Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan openly admitted he stayed in the ring far longer than his body could handle. In the 90s, even with a reduced schedule, years of accumulated damage kept catching up with him. For much of his career, Hogan delivered his signature leg drop on WWF rings that felt like solid concrete, sending nearly all the impact straight into his lower back. It became the injury that haunted him for the rest of his life, a damaged spine, compressed vertebrae, and constant pain. Yet the roar of the crowd was something Hogan couldn't walk away from. In 2002, during his nostalgia-fueled WWE return, his back problems flared so badly that his in-ring time was drastically limited over the next 4 years. But the Immortal still wasn't ready to stop. Financial turmoil after his divorce forced him to keep earning money, and returning to the ring became his only viable option. From 2007 to 2009, Hogan continued wrestling at select non-WWE events, even as his personal life spiraled. His body was stiff, his movement labored, but he stepped into the ring as if it were the only place that still gave him purpose. By 2010, when Hogan signed with TNA, his back was in such poor condition that he could barely take a bump. Doctors told him outright that he should never wrestle again. But Hogan did what Hogan always did, pushed past medical warnings. He still wrestled a handful of matches in TNA, even though every fall risked shattering his spine. It became the final chapter of a legendary career, but also a painful example of the cost when a superstar can't step away at the right time. On July 24, 2025, Hulk Hogan passed away in Clearwater, Florida, from acute myocardial infarction. The autopsy confirmed the cause and noted his history of atrial fibrillation and chronic lymphocytic leukemia. A sad ending for the man once seen as the face of an entire wrestling generation. Number 4. Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle returned to WWE in 2017 as the general manager, and from his earliest appearances, fans could already sense a harsh reality. The body of the man who once dominated both the Olympics and WWE could no longer withstand the physical toll it once did. The fact that WWE kept Angle in a managerial role instead of letting him wrestle regularly was a clear signal that his career had entered its final chapter. In the rare occasions he was asked to step back into the ring, Angle showed up with a heavy gait, slow movements, and a body worn down so severely that he barely resembled the steel warrior he used to be. Kurt admitted that years of non-stop competition had pushed his joints to near-total degeneration. His back, neck, and knees, once able to endure thousands of suplexes, were now in constant pain. Being away for years before returning only made it harder for his body to readjust to WWE's intensity. Even though his spirit was still on fire, Angle couldn't hide the truth. Every bump felt like punishment. Doctors even warned that a single mistake could leave him with a permanent injury. When Angle finally returned to the ring, he had to accept a series of defeats, something completely opposite of the man once called the best in the world. Those losses didn't just weigh down his morale. They reminded him that his body could no longer keep up with his will. Every time the crowd chanted his name, Kurt pushed a little harder, fully aware he was paying for it with his long-term health. Then came the most bitter moment. Baron Corbin was chosen as his opponent for Angle's farewell match. No glory, no triumphant final victory, just a loss that marked the end of a legendary yet deeply tragic career. It perfectly reflected what Angle had faced in his final years, a body that could no longer hold up, and a legend forced to step aside in the face of an unavoidable truth. Number 3. The Great Khali. The Great Khali is a prime example of a wrestler who entered WWE with a body already past its ideal condition for the company's demanding environment. Before joining WWE, Khali had an impressive run in Japan, where his massive size gave him a clear advantage. But even then, his knees had already begun to deteriorate badly. By the time he arrived in WWE, his body simply couldn't handle agile movement or explosive power. As a result, his performances never truly reflected the potential he once showed overseas. Although WWE tried to present Khali as a dominant force, they had no choice but to give him a much lighter schedule compared to other top stars. It wasn't because they didn't want to push him, it was because his body simply couldn't sustain it. His heavy footwork, slowed reaction time, and near inability to perform complex moves meant every match had to be carefully structured to minimize risks. Over time, even that reduced workload became too much for his damaged legs. Khali's brightest period came between 2006 and 2007, when WWE promoted him as an unstoppable giant. But that shine faded quickly as his physical condition continued to decline. From a fearsome threat, he gradually shifted into a comedic attraction in low-stakes matches where athletic demands were minimal. By the time he left WWE in 2014, most fans were no longer excited to see him. Still, none of this was Khali's fault. His limitations came from serious health issues, especially his nearly ruined knees. Despite that, Khali maintained enormous star power in India, where he is viewed as a symbol of strength. His influence became so widespread that even people who didn't follow wrestling knew the name, the Great Khali. A reminder that sometimes, a star's charisma can extend far beyond what they can physically do in the ring. Number 2. Big Show. Big Show's journey began in 1995, when he first stepped into the professional wrestling world under the name, The Giant. Within just a few months, he became a sensation, a towering force with unmatched size and power that set him apart from everyone else in the industry. In 1999, Big Show signed with WWE and quickly became one of the most dominant figures of the Attitude Era. But the very moment he was viewed as the perfect monster was also when his body began suffering under pressures no human frame was built to handle. Big Show's 450-pound frame was his biggest advantage, and his biggest burden. Every step, every slam, every fall to the mat placed unimaginable stress on his knees, hips, and spine. As early as the 2000s, he was already dealing with joint degeneration, chronic back pain, and a long list of weight-related health issues. Even so, Big Show continued grinding through a brutal schedule, because WWE constantly needed him to fill any gap at any moment. Entering the 2010s, Big Show's body finally began to push back. He underwent multiple surgeries to repair bone and joint damage, especially his knees, which had been worn down after thousands of high-impact bumps. He spent months recovering each time, but the moment he returned, he dived right back into the heavy workload, as if refusing to give himself a real break. His final years in WWE exposed the toll he had endured. One of his most notable late-career matches was against Randy Orton in 2020, a point at which he was clearly struggling just to keep pace with the younger star. Moves that were once routine now looked heavy, and a single hit could leave him aching for days. Yet Big Show still pushed forward, determined to finish his career with dignity. After more than 25 years of sacrifice, Big Show finally stepped away to preserve what remained of his health. Over 2 decades, he gave up not only his youth but also his body to deliver unforgettable moments for fans. Even with his frame nearly worn down completely, Big Show remains a symbol of endurance, a giant who gave every last ounce of strength out of pure love for the business. Number 1. The Undertaker. For over 3 decades, The Undertaker stood as WWE's immortal icon. But behind that cold, stoic presence was a body worn down by countless brutal battles. And his collapse at WrestleMania 30 became the turning point, the moment everything slipped out of control. The severe concussion he suffered not only ended his legendary streak, but also shook something fans believed was unbreakable: his confidence in himself. A year later, The Undertaker returned. But he was no longer the unstoppable dead man, delivering epic, 20-minute classics. Instead, he shifted to shorter matches built around simple, safe power offense. The adjustment fit his age and physical condition, but fans knew the truth: Undertaker was trying to hold on to whatever remained of his career. WrestleMania 33 could have been the perfect ending. Losing to Roman Reigns, then placing his hat and coat in the center of the ring, it was a powerful, symbolic farewell. But Undertaker himself couldn't accept it. He knew the match hadn't met the standard he believed a legend like him deserved. And so began a dangerous cycle. Every disappointing return pushed him to come back again, searching for the one good match worthy of closing his story. WrestleMania 34 was supposed to be that chance. The Undertaker trained hard for a long, classic showdown like the ones that built his myth. But all expectations shattered in just 2.5 minutes, as he destroyed John Cena in a match that was too quick, too simple. A win, but one that left no sense of fulfillment. Then came a string of forgettable international matches, including those in Saudi Arabia, where his age, injuries, and physical limitations were painfully obvious to millions watching. Many fans said openly, "Taker needs to retire now." Yet he kept pushing, seeking redemption for performances he himself wasn't satisfied with. It wasn't until Extreme Rules 2019 that Undertaker finally delivered a match that made him feel, even briefly, like The Undertaker again. Crisp strikes, explosive moments, flashes of the old glory. And right then, he knew his body couldn't endure another war. The Boneyard match with AJ Styles at WrestleMania 36 ultimately gave the Phenom the ending he had chased for years. Creative, intense, atmospheric, emotional, his best performance since 2015. Most importantly, it allowed him to close his career with pride, free from regret. An almost absurdly long journey. A body nearly destroyed. But in the end, The Undertaker found the one moment he truly deserved, a farewell fit for a legend. Their bodies may be worn down, but the legacy they leave behind will live forever in the hearts of fans. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and support Wrestling Sphere so we can continue bringing you even more high-quality content.